Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, George C. Usually, people pay him to speak, and he was wonderfully generous enough to give it to the Marawi soldiers, so that's kind of cool, right?
It was a free, motivational, inspirational speech.
Yes, very good. All right, okay. Guess what time it is? Not the literal time. Okay.
It's time for the bloodbath.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Richard Heydarian versus Sass, Rogando, Sasot. All right, let's back this up. They've been at each other's throats for years, years and years. Their politics diverge preposterously. Like they disagree
A lot of things.
but they actually agree on a few things also,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So this is what's going to happen. For the first time ever, they're going to go face-to-face in an actual debate. Can you guys give me a proper microphone? I sound like
Yeah,
I sound like an epileptic robot.
All right. This one sounds nice.
I agree. Right?
Yeah.
Guys, can you guys give me
While we're fixing the audio, so this debate and this event that you guys attended, which is a
Hello.
good event
Better?
for our Marawi soldiers,
Yeah.
right? It was born out of the frustration and idea of the two of them. Of Sass and
no, it was my idea.
Heydarian.
But
to host, but to have the debate.
yes. Well, anyway, Richard and Sass hate each other. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
Recently, they've been a little more civil, and then every now and then the fangs come out, and then politics is a funny
It's
thing.
a roller coaster.
It is. But now, me and you as real political fans, we get to see two of the big...
Spectators.
Absolutely. Two academic powerhouses, and I mean that without hyperbole or exaggeration, go head to head and debate the issues that they disagree on fervently.
We've heard the candidates on a lot of the issues,
Mm-hmm.
but this one will be hearing more academic, incisive. What?
And hopefully,
Thoughts?
hopefully, like a lot of...
No offense to the candidates that we've had.
Right, exactly. And hopefully it gets a little aggressive and fiery, and then they make up in the end,
course.
right? Okay, so I want to let you guys know, for everybody that's here, online, the last, what is it, six hours? People have non-stop in Texas. When is the freaking debate happening? Well, it's happening right now. It's happening right now, okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, first, I'd like to introduce the moderators of the debate. They're going to be sitting right here. The first moderator, Jesus Felicius. Our second moderator is the host of the #1 political radio show by far in the country, and my dear, dear friend, Trixie Cruz Angeles. All right, you guys sit over here. All right. First off, a true academic, real intellectual, the guy that took the most heat, both from the yellows and the reds, throughout the last 3 weeks. Was very close to nervous breakdowns a couple of times when we helped him out. Really, really smart guy, and I appreciate his bravery. We needed somebody as crazy as me to step into something like this, right, Migs? Right, Migs? It's pretty crazy. And I admire him for that. Ladies and gentlemen, the very, very popular and notorious Richard Heydarian. And all the way from Europe. I got flack for saying this online. I called her the third most important blogger in Philippine history. It's true. It's Mocha thing behind her. And we're basically an engagement. It's the only quantifiable thing, right? People were saying like the biggest bloggers or like some fashion bloggers, whatever. That's not what I meant. It's Politicon. Obviously, I meant politics. The third most important blogger in Philippine history, a true blue powerhouse in terms of everything social media, and a worldwide transgender advocate. She spoke at the United Nations, an impressive human being, and my good friend, superstar Sass Rogando Sasot. Somebody came back to Manila with a new body. Look at her. Look at her. She's working out. All right. All right. Okay, so the views on all the Facebook Live stuff, they dipped a little bit during some of the candidates, unfortunately. No offense to them. Now they are skyrocketing. The views are skyrocketing again because these two are going to debate each other on several key issues. This is how this is going to work. I'm going to give Richard 7 minutes for an opening statement. I will give Sass 7 minutes for an opening statement. Then I will give Richard 3 minutes to enumerate everything he hates about Sass. And then, I'm not kidding. And then I will give Sass 3 minutes to enumerate everything she hates about Richard. And then we do this thing called strong manning, where you flip it. I'm going to ask Richard to, in 3 minutes again, to enumerate everything he likes about Sass. And then I'm going to ask Sass to do the same 3 minutes, everything she likes about Richard. And then we start a 90-minute brawl that hopefully gets really, antagonistic and fiery and whatever. And I hope they make up in the end, because it'll be a good example to the kids. What? Okay. Anyway, so that's the plan for the entire thing. Jesus and Trixie, obviously on opposite sides, so this is going to be very fair and balanced. If you guys heckle anybody, Trixie and Jesus are going to tell you to shut the fuck up. Okay? So we're going to have this decent and then civil and all that stuff. Are you guys ready? Richard, you ready? You ready, Sass? Everybody, you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, the debate between Sass, Rogando, Sasot, and Richard Heydarian starts right now. Richard, 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, everyone, for making it here. Let me give advance apologies if I'm not at my best. I think I'm on my third Advil and whatever else Miguel gave me a while ago. And I smell like white flour all over, like an old lady. I only have 7 minutes. I don't want to abuse my time. So, first of all, I'm really glad that this event has come together. Just to be clear about the circumstances as far as I'm concerned. So I go to Baguio. March 3 was my birthday. I come down from Pulag, 2 days away from the cyber world, and I come down, and the first news I see on my Facebook feed is that Comelec is saying there's not enough time to arrange a debate between Hukbong and Ocho, Derecho. And I felt that was quite a letdown as an understatement, because sa aking palagay, this is the most important elections in our history. Bakit kamo? If you look at the Senate elections, depending on the composition of the Senate, if President Duterte's allies dominate that, it will allow President Duterte actually to shape the Philippine political system for generations to come by changing our constitution. So whether you're for or against constitutional change, these elections will be very important. The second thing is, many analysts, including myself, we look at the 2016 elections as some sort of a protest vote, right? Because in many ways, it was a protest against frustrations and long-running grievances of Filipino people against the failures of not only the previous administrations, but I think more or less all the administrations that came after the Marcos regime. So in that sense, 2019 was an opportunity for us to affirm whether President Duterte and his kind of presidency is what we need our country or not. So if you're for President Duterte, this is your time to say, well, I gave the guy 3 years. He gave a lot of promises. I think he did good enough. Let's go. And if you think you made a mistake, that maybe his promises, the 6 months promises, were not implemented, well, this is your time to correct it, right? And more importantly, of course, the 2019 elections is also emerging as some sort of a dry run for 2022 elections. And who could be the successors of President Duterte? One of the problems we have here in the Philippines is lack of continuity. Every 6 years, we have anti-incumbency vote. And that's actually one reason why we have lack of continuity also in our policies and very weak state institutions. Therefore, for me, the 2019 elections is important, not to mention you'll have the most number of people participating in these elections. Comelec is projecting more than 50 million people. So kung isa kang senador and you get 70% of the votes, that puts you around 30 million plus, right, votes. And if you get more than 30 million plus, you can argue for a higher position in 2022. So para sa akin, itong pinakamalagay na election natin sa ating kasaysayan, and this will have implications for the long run, and yet, And yet, if you look at it, we cannot even have a proper debate. And of course, I had a lot of frustration. I mean, and we'll talk more about that. But so to bring this thing together in itself for me is a success. I'm very glad that we were able to organize this thing under very difficult conditions. I mean, of course, we wanted to have more preparation time, and this is not only me or Franco or a few people. It's actually a group of like-minded people, and of course, there were also friends like Miguel and among others who gave very good suggestions to make it as good as possible. This is an icebreaker event, and we hope that this sets the standard for similar kind of events in the future. Isa sa aking pinakamalaking frustration is that now we essentially live not only in a polarized world, but we live in two silos. So kung you're anti-administration, you know who to go. And if you're pro-administration, you know who to go, right? And there's no conversation going on. And if you're an ordinary Filipino who does not have a lot of familiarity with the issues, it's a question of who do you go to. So if you go to this side, you'll get half of the, you get the half full part of the picture, and if you go to the other side, it's a negative part of the picture. So I felt these kinds of discussions are important because one of the other problems we have, for instance, I work in the mainstream media also, aside from, of course, my academic work. And the problem is that in mainstream media, and in fact, even worse, in social media, napakalimitado po yung chance mo to provide a nuanced discussion of very, very complicated issues. Napansin ko nga, pag nuanced yung inyong analysis, you don't get many likes. In fact, you may get more likes just posting some stupid selfie rather than posting something very complicated, about a very complex issue. So I think the other thing that we need here in the Philippines is the culture of first agreeing to disagree, disagreeing without being disagreeable, and more importantly, this kind of long-form discussions whereby political thinkers and commentators and bloggers can come together and actually tease out what is rational and what is irrational about each other's discussion. And I think that is why this is a very, very important event. And I said, this is not about me, or this is not about Sassot or any of us involved here per se, but this is about all of us coming together. Now, there are a lot of people who are also criticizing this as saying that this may favor certain political thinking or otherwise, but you know what? I'm actually glad that because of this event, we'll actually concretely raise some help. Hindi lang kami kwentong barbero dito or daktakan lang. We're actually going to raise funds thanks to you guys who bothered to come all the way here for people in Marawi. Not only for the veterans of the Marawi siege in 2017, but also for the internally displaced people of Marawi, right? We need to help our brothers and sisters, both in the AFP and also in people of Marawi. So thank you so much to you guys for attending this event, and together we will be able to help our people in concrete terms. So hindi lang tayo in terms of diskurso makatulong sa taong bayan in terms of raising the level of consciousness, but we'll also provide concrete and tangible benefits to those who are in need. Thank you very much for that, and looking forward to a proper debate. Thank you.
Round of applause for Richard. All right. Are you jet lagged, Miss Sassot? You are. So you ready to give you 7 minutes? Not really? No? Are you nervous? Okay. Our views on Facebook just spiked. It's stratospheric now. Ladies and gentlemen, to give her opening statement, my good friend Sass, Rogando, Sasot.
Some help.
I'm just gonna set my timer. I'm sorry. I'm a buzzer. I want my own guide. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank all the organizers of this event for making this happen. This is not an easy feat to make, and Richard and I both know how difficult this is to mount emotionally, psychologically, financially, and in a lot of different ways. Ang isa sa mga sikat nating salawikain sa ating sariling wika ay ang hindi marunong lumingon sa kanyang pinanggalingan ay hindi makararating sa paroroonan, which is, those who cannot look back to where they came from, cannot go to where they should go, right? They cannot reach their destination. And this saying is about historical estrangement, or our tendency to treat the present moment as if it exists in a vacuum and wasn't shaped by events in the past. We were asked to shape our opening speech according to the question of why we're here. And we are here because of what happened in the past, right? We are here because of the intense political divisions that's happening in our country right now that was brought by the election of President Duterte. For better or for worse, he changed our country. He changed our country by lifting the veil of hypocrisy that is shrouding our country for years and years and years. And for the very first time, we are looking at each other as who we really are with each other, right? We are very passionate people as Filipinos. And that's why in social media, we treat each other as if we would like to kill each other, but in reality, that's just how we relate to each other, right? I lived for a long time in the Philippines, and one of the comments that Dutch people tell me whenever I talk to them is that they feel that I'm a really very intense person, when in fact, that's just how we communicate with each other. So I think that a lot of things that are happening right now in our country is brought by who we are as Filipinos and who we are as people, as shaped by our history, shaped by 300 years of colonization by the Spaniards, half a decade or so by the Americans, and 3 or 4 years or so by the Japanese. We have been shaped as people who should be subjugated. And for the first time, we have a president who's telling us that we shouldn't be subjugated, right? And he's telling this through a really violent discourse, right? He curses, right? He say these things to the Catholic Church. And he really uses crude language against politicians that we all know really fucked us up as a people. So why am I here? Personally, I'm here because I am reclaiming a lost tradition, a lost time in Philippine history when transgender people in the Catholic Church were treated with dignity. Before Spanish colonization, we were spiritual leaders. We were artists. We were political advisors to political leaders. Why am I here? As a citizen of the Philippines, because like Richard Heydarian, I believe that we should take our political discourse to a different level, a level that would not lead us to more nihilism, but to a level that would make us understand that what binds us as a people is our future, and our future is shaped by our past. Why am I here? As an academic, I'm here because I have a responsibility to inform people that what we are going through right now has a long history. And that history must be teased out so that we would be able to understand why we are here. And through that understanding, we would fully know and would have a better idea where we should go as a people, as a country, and most of all, as human beings, united by one thing, and that is the desire to give a better future for the next generation. Thank you so much, and I look forward to a really fruitful discussion, debate, and conversation. All of those things would happen tonight, so I look forward to that.
All righty then. Any suggestions or violent reactions from the both of you? Trixie, Jesus? Microphone. Guys, microphone. All 4 microphones. For the moderators. Go ahead.
No, I was just waiting for the hate part. Clearly, there's too much love in the room.
Too much love so far. Let's go to the hate part then. Richard, are you ready to enumerate one by one all the things you hate about Sass in 30 minutes? Yes. Guys, can you leave the microphones open, please?
Please leave them all open, yeah.
Okay. Now, my
Ito
time.
talaga sabi niya, I'm being sabotaged.
No, this is not the first time. 3 minutes. What I don't.
It's just a joke.
Oh, go ahead.
Let's be I'll be honest. The reason why I was open to this discussion with Sass is not because of the Sass I've been dealing with since 2016. I actually got to know about Sass when she did one of the reviews of my book Asia's New Battlefield, where I look at the U.S.-China relationship. It was a long 300-page book, and she, of course, specialized in South China Sea when she was also taking her master's. Oh, by the way, congratulations for your master's. I'm glad that I'm finally debating with a major blogger. It's always good.
That sounded
And the problem is
condescending.
that over the next 2 years, I saw a lot of criticism coming from her. My concern here was that the lack of nuance in terms of the attacks that she had against me. Now, I cannot also blame certain people to criticize me because, I write differently on social media. I write differently in my columns. I write differently in books. No, so I understand certain criticism, but the Sassot that I was more interested in having an engagement with, kind of intellectual engagement, was the pre-2016 Sassot. Because I watched one of her videos when she gave an address at the United Nations as an LGBT activist. And I believe that Sassot is still there, right?
You're supposed to say things you don't like about her.
No, I mean, as I said, I didn't like the Sassot post-2016. I felt there was a lot of mistreatment of my analysis and argument. In fact, I think her ideas and her post actually provoked a lot of hatred against me that I was not prepared for. Over the past 2 years, my God, I was just teaching, a junior professor. I thought I'm gonna go on TV and look cute and give nice analysis. Oh my God, next thing I open up my Facebook. Oh my God, all these people, the only thing they didn't give me was rape threat, right? God,
hold on.
everything was there. Death threat was there. Insults were there. And honestly, I'll hold her quite, at least partly responsible for that. I call.
Wait, hold on.
So
Who said you were cute?
I got death threats. I can screenshot. No, but by the way, Sassot was very kind enough to one person who actually made a death threat after we agreed to dialogue and essentially told these people to F off. And I was really glad about that. So that's my point. There are two kinds of Sassot we're dealing with, and I was not really happy with the 2000. And by the way, I'm really angry at people who screenshot stuff and then kind of use it against me. I was very, very, very unhappy about that. That's what I hate the most. Screenshotting stuff. Now I don't feel whatever. Okay. 3 minutes done.
I'm
3
really
minutes
enjoying
is too
this.
short and at the same time too long because it could be too long because it could, start a war and I don't want to go there. And I want to. Okay, I'll wrap. Okay, I'll keep it there. I'll hold my horses. Thank you.
All right.
I think this is a safe
Richard,
distance.
Well done. Well, for the record, okay, because I was obviously closer to Sass before this whole thing happened, and I got closer to Richard over the last month, and I think in terms of character and principle, he's a good man. He's a good man. I disagree with 97% of his politics, but he is.
You only read my social media posts. Come on, admit it.
No, but we get along. We have lunch together, all that stuff, and he's a good guy. He took everything on the chest like a real man. So thank you for that. Sass. Okay, tama na yung buzzer. He stopped now. So Sass, 3 minutes. Everything you hate about Richard.
Well, there's only one thing that I hate about Richard, and I'm gonna say something from an academic perspective. What I don't like about Richard when the way he writes, because I read both of his books. I do not criticize someone when I don't read their work, right? I read both of his books from cover to cover, and what I don't appreciate is his historical omissions, right? And I understand why he's doing that because he's analyzing something from a particular way. He is analyzing. It's analysis from the present, right? And he is looking at the dynamics at the present time. But for me, raised on a tradition that must take into account, history, you must take into account what happened in the past and how the present moment has been shaped. One particular work of Richard that I noticed was his last book, right? It was elegantly written, I wouldn't deny Richard Heydarian's rhetorical skills. He is really good at it. But he missed something about profiling the personality of Duterte. When I look at his references, he never referenced any Davao historian. And this was also actually raised to me by Mindanaoan historian Carlo Antonio Galay David. Shout out. Nanonood siya ngayon. And he told me that, Richard Heydarian could have consulted, for example, Macario Chu. And he's like a prominent Davao historian. And, perhaps in the next iteration of Heydarian's book, that's what the good thing about works like this. You can always develop it. It's always a work in progress. Yes, exactly. And then maybe he could incorporate those things and how they help shape Duterte now. Because, it was the first book. To be fair with Heydarian, it's the first book about profiling Duterte, what shaped his decision-making today. And being the first one to do it, you would always leave out a lot of important things, right? So maybe in the second version, he could consult, Mindanao historians.
Or you?
No, not me, because I'm not an expert in Mindanao history. There are Mindanao historians who could help him provide a better psycho-historical profile of Duterte.
First of all, I'm disappointed because that was so nice from both of you. I just complimented Richard right after. I'm going to compliment Sass right now. During this entire thing, I really genuinely wanted this to be nonpartisan. For me to actually reach out to Mara Bam and Lenny, I was willing to invite Javert. I seriously was. I thought it would have been funny to have a 2-minute bit with her, here, and drop it. I wanted to reach out to Jim Paredes and say, do something fun. I wanted this to be nonpartisan. I wanted it to be balanced, right? But when it was announced, we got so much hate from the Yellows and overwhelming love from the Duterte and Marcos side. And I'm like, yeah, anyway, that all ended with the charity thing. Anyway, this is the character of Sass. Sass called me and goes, Richard might have a breakdown, so make it all about him. 90% of all the media, give it to him. I don't care. I just want to do good in the debate. And then also he said, well, I don't know, this is kind of a compliment. Also she said, tell him to focus on the debate itself, because I'm focusing on the debate itself and he's focusing on the trolls. And if that happens, kakainin ko siya ng buhay. Right? So anyway, for Sass to say that, just you give everything to Richard. So to ease the stress he was having, I think that speaks volumes for a character. So that's good things. Now we're gonna strongman each other after just having criticized each other, fairly reasonably. Richard, 3 minutes. What do you agree about or on with Sass?
Well, I actually agree with their criticism of my book. It was the first book. I wrote it under the most difficult circumstances. You can imagine one day you're meeting President Duterte, the next day, there are people who were victims of, reported extrajudicial killings. You can imagine the emotions I was going through while trying to write a book, right? And it was actually a monograph more than a book. So those were the circumstances. And definitely, it's Rise of Duterte, so it could be a multi-volume publication and actually have a separate book coming out on defense and foreign policy of President Duterte. And I hope to meet President Duterte soon and also get more of his direct points of view on the record. So thank you very much. That's a very valid criticism. And when I made that book, I never claimed that this will be the definitive biography of President Duterte, but more of a kind of a way for us to understand bakit nanalo lang, hindi lang si Pangulong Duterte, but leaders very similar to him, that I've been profiling. Narendra Modi in India, Joko Widodo in Indonesia, Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Turkey, and actually I have a project right now with Harvard Law School when I'm looking at the advent of penal populism and right-wing populism in emerging markets. I call it emerging market populism, right? So thank you very much for giving me a chance to shamelessly plug in my upcoming works. Yeah. So thank you. I like that. No, what I also like is, this is the thing. Sassot a while ago was telling me, this is one of the problems being a writer in this country, including a political writer. I've probably written more than 1,000 articles, I have a 4th book coming out, and yet I feel people rather read tweets I make or some social media comments I made. It's not, we don't have the most literary oriented, just to put it very euphemistic way, society. And I was very disappointed, that when I was writing about Duterte and everything like that, I don't think even a single one of my colleagues bothered to write a review locally. So my book got reviewed in the Financial Times, it got reviewed in Times Literary Supplement, and there was a German recent review of that. Not a single one among my colleagues. I don't know what's going on. I don't want to create more trouble. I'll just keep it there. She bothered to read it. I disagreed with how she read it. I felt it was nitpicking, etc. But we're already strong-manning, right? But she is among few people who bothered to actually read and actually critique it. And for me, that's respect. That's intellectual respect. And I think how I wish I got that from some other colleagues or people in other places. So thank you very much, Sassot. And thank you very much, Sassot, also for making sure that this event happens by, this guy is a very hyper guy. I am a very hyper guy, and I don't want to give more details about backroom negotiations, but there were some folks worried about us getting at each other. So yeah.
Dude, we killed it.
So Sass was very nice to actually facilitate and make sure that we make this work. No, not because we have problems per se on a personal level. This was really a difficult thing to pull off, guys. In a under very, very short notice, right? Under very difficult circumstances. So, maraming salamat. Thank you very much. Thanks, Sass.
Wow, that's an intrusive buzz. Thank you, Richard. Well done. Well done. I like that. Okay, Sassy, 3 minutes. Everything you love about Richard, or agree with.
Hello. Well, I think what I like the most about Richard is that he's very, very, very good in managing his public persona. When it comes to writing and etc. When you have a public face, I don't know if any one of you know this. I used to be the personal assistant of Bibi Gananghari. I was her PA for like 2-3 months. And, she's a celebrity, and before she opens her mouth to the public, she has her entire team, or not entire team, I was with her, or etc., to manage, what she put out in the public. Because it's very difficult for you to be saying the same thing or doing the wrong things and giving out the wrong impressions. And I think Richard was fairly good in managing his public persona, right? He appears civil. He puts out himself out there most of the time.
Stop it. Behave.
No, he appears civil. He dresses well, right? He dresses well. So I think he did it well, right? And it wasn't something that I didn't really do well in the last 3 years, because I was like telling this to some of people close to me that I never expected to be in a position that I am right now. I came from the underground. My audience was like really a niche audience. I came from a really, really marginalized discourse community. And there I can be myself, right? It's like the Vice Ganda thing, right? The joke about Jessica Soho. When he did it, it wasn't received well. But if you say it in a particular discourse community, they wouldn't give shit about it, right? Because you know each other. So I'm used to that kind of community wherein people know you intimately, and whatever that you do is, they could give it a pass. And so I wasn't really good in managing my public persona, because I still thought that I am still communicating with people that I know. So there were a lot of times that I wish that I could have been more finesse in using the power or influence or what have you that has been given to me by chance. And that chance was, of course, Thinking Pinoy was a very, very huge. He contributed to make that chance happen. He was the one behind everything that you're experiencing right now. So even him, like he was telling me that be more gracious. But I had never experienced being gracious in talking to people. So yeah, so that's the thing that I like Richard the most. He was so good in managing your public
I
persona.
really should have proofread that buzzer before we started this debate. Okay, great. Thank you. A round of applause, please. They were very honest, very gracious. All right. Do you think Sass is pretty?
You're not the moderator. This guy.
Let's
Alright.
go and moderator.
Franco out.
Get to the,
All right, no more jokes. No more jokes. Okay, let's stop talking about them and let's get to the issues at hand. The main issues that are at the forefront of the national conversation. We're gonna be talking about the West Philippine Sea, tama? Philippine-China relations, federalism, and the drug war. So, because we're gonna have a Q&A, we're gonna do 25 minutes each for all. Trixie and Jesus, at any point, if you think that their data is wrong, you have the right to interrupt. Yeah, well, I mean, you have Jesus. It's fair. Okay. Well, anyway, okay, so we're gonna do that. 3 topics, right? Right after that, we go straight to Q&A. You guys can participate and all that stuff. Are you guys ready? Ready? What do we start with? West Philippine Sea, What do you guys want to start with? West Philippine, China relations, federalism, or the drug war? China relations, yes? I think China relations is good. All right, let's get this debate on the road. Ladies first.
Can
Go.
I have my visuals projected on the screen? How many minutes do I have?
No, this segment has 25 between the both of you. So
Oh, wow.
so I guess you guys
Yeah.
just keep going. Just you can interrupt each other. Just don't talk over each other. That's all.
Okay. I'm gonna stand so that. Okay, while we're waiting.
So each of us will give a short PowerPoint and then we'll go to the discussion proper. I think that would be a better one, no? You give your PowerPoint and then Amoeba and then we just counter each other.
Yeah, exactly. Wala na bang ilalabo pa yan? Charot. Our first topic for today is everything about Philippine and China relations. From the South China Sea conflict to the loans and what have you. So I would like to begin my position on this issue with this map. Akala nyo, ako yung, akala ni Richard siya yung sinasabot. Ako pa. Okay, this map was a late 17th century map, right? It's popularly called the Selden map after its owner, John Selden. So it's a Chinese map, right? It's a Chinese map. And John Selden is a British guy. He was responsible for the principle called Mare Colossum, which is the foundation of the concept of territorial sea, that you can actually appropriate the sea as land, right? It's one of the foundational principles of that. And this map is actually interesting because during the time, and even now, when a country constructs a map, they're always at the center. And what's interesting about this Chinese map is that China is not at the center of the map, but what? Nakikita nyo pa? Hindi. Palabuin nyo pa? No, the center of the map is actually the sea, the South China Sea. That's why it's like a very interesting artifact of history to reflect on. Because this is the only map made in China that never had China as its center, right? So what does this tell us? How the sea is an important thing in the relationship among these different communities during the time. Because during the time that this map was made, trade was the #1 way of relating to each other. And the sea was not a source of division, just like what it is now. but it was a source of unity, cooperation, exchange. And this happened before European colonization happened, before the ideas of territory, of the sea being appropriated as land infected our minds because of European colonization. And this past, I believe, should be one of the things that we should put forward in the current discourse that is dominating right now about the conflict. Because the conflict is all about owning a piece of the sea, right? Owning, it's either the sea owning most of the sea, or the Philippines parcelizing the sea, or Vietnam owning as much as the sea as China is currently owning. And I think this is a discourse that we should put forward out there. And instead of criticizing China for, of course, the fictional account that it owns the sea, we should read history with it. That the sea, during most of at that time, wasn't owned by anyone. It was a source of our cooperation, of our exchange. It is the thing that bind us together, that separate us. And that thing should be at the center of our diplomatic relationship with China. So instead of foregoing history and focusing on what we have right now, which is just a product of the changes that happen in this region that actually produce the conflict. What are those changes? Our understanding of territory, of understanding of the sea that could be appropriated as land, and through that, we now have the concept of exclusive economic zones. And these concepts, they don't lead us to a better relationship with our neighbors. Instead, it kept on dividing us, and it kept us on putting at the center the most important interest in this conflict. It is not the interest of Vietnam. It is not the interest of China. And definitely it is not the interest of the Philippines. That is the most important interest that we should consider in this conflict. And which interest is that? It is the interest of the sea. Because the sea doesn't understand the concept of EEZ, of territory. It only understands one thing, and that is its ecological health. Right now, the number one problem of the South China Sea is overfishing. Second is plastic pollution. And you know who are among the top three polluters of the sea? Number one is China. Number two is Indonesia. Number three is our country. So if we keep on focusing on owning the sea, instead of focusing on what's best for the sea, none of us would fully enjoy the blessings of this sea. Thank you.
Richard, you may do your own presentation. Don't forget your mic.
Na-charge na, hindi low-bat. Wait, my PowerPoint actually covers all three issues, but I'll just focus on the... Okay, actually, the other part is a very quick, and then we can jump. Okay, well, the thing is this. I've been writing and discussing the South China Sea or West Philippine Sea disputes for quite some time. In fact, I was in the Philippine Congress working there. I also advised the Senate when we came up with the resolution on renaming certain portions, not the entirety of South China Sea, as well as West Philippine Sea. Ito yung exclusive economic zone natin at ating continental shelf. So we have to be very clear. We're not saying the entire South China Sea is West Philippine Sea. And of course, you know, my position is very, very clear. China is a geographical reality, while the United States is a geopolitical anomaly. The reason why the US is a paramount power in this part of the world is because they won the Second World War. If they lost the Second World War, we would have been living in a very, very different world. China has been here for 1,000 years and probably thousands of years, and probably they'll be here for another 1,000 years and more, assuming climate change doesn't kill all of us in the next 100 years. So we need to deal with China. And in fact, I criticize the previous administrations for not engaging China and for shunning China. In fact, we had the most toxic bilateral relationship with China during that period. Where's my PowerPoint? It's taking too time. Okay. Can we go to the next one? Okay. Anyways, my whole idea is we live in a very important time. Quite controversial, but I think the smartest guy of the 19th century, he said two things. The first thing, he said many things, including volumes of books, but two things that stood out for me are these. The first thing he said is, all that is solid melts into air, and all that is holy is profane. In many ways, I think this applies to the Philippines on all levels, in terms of our foreign defense policy, also in terms of our domestic politics. But Karl Marx also said another thing, I'm going to name him, and I know I'm going to get bashed for this. He said that philosophers have only been interpreting the world in the past. The point of it is to change it. Now, my problem with that kind of thinking is that I agree with the first one. I think that applies to us in the Philippines. I think the second one is applying us in the Philippines, but in the wrong way. I think what is happening right now in the Philippines is that everyone is talking about what we should do to solve a specific problem, whether it's in the West Philippine Sea, whether it's a drug war problem, whether it's federalism, among other things. But actually what we need to do is the opposite of what Karl Marx is saying. We have to really understand the nature of problem. One of the things that you learn in mathematics is that you cannot solve the formula or the equation if you do not even understand what is the problem at hand. Pagdating sa West Philippine Sea, ang problema natin ay klarong-klaro. It is China which is behind the tensions in the West Philippine Sea. It is not the United States of America. It is not the Philippines. And, administrations can go on blaming each other. But it's China that is claiming the entirety of South China Sea. In fact, we don't even know exactly what China is claiming. Is China claiming the entire South China Sea with all the islands and fishery resources and oil and gas? Is it claiming only the islands and their surrounding waters? You see, China is not even clarifying that. But what the Chinese are doing on the ground is something of great concern. Can we go next? Okay, we discussed it. My point is, I'm not anti-Duterte. I'm probably the first Dutertologist, right? In that sense, that was the whole point of coming up with that book. Next, and President Duterte has a copy of my book, as you can see. And my analysis of what's happening in South China Sea is not based on haka-haka lang. I talk to leaders. I talk to presidents. President Arroyo, I talked to her a few days ago. I talked to President Ramos. I talked to Foreign Secretary Albert de Rosario. So I try to get the point of view of different leaders in order to understand ano bang nasa loob ng mga policy makers natin when they were dealing with these very difficult conditions. Kasi mahirap talagang hinaharap natin ngayon sa West Philippine Sea. There's nothing easy about that. Can we go next? And of course, if you think I was previous administration, look at that. I actually, in 2015, I made a piece in Center for Strategic International Studies. I said, ang problema ng Pinoy Aquino administration was they're so strong in terms of criticizing China and taking a legal case against China. What was lacking was direct bilateral engagement because you need to talk to your neighbors. Pero mas mahalaga pa doon, this is the anomaly. And I've been talking to Secretary Lorenzana, among others, about this. Alam mo, 1977-78 pa lang, meron na tayong airstrip dyan sa Pag-asa. Over the next 30 years, it seems none of the administrations bothered to maintain and upgrade our facilities there. And over the past 10 years, Vietnam, China, all of these countries have been expanding their facilities. The scramble on the ground was happening while the Aquino administration was more focused on the legal case at The Hague. And I felt that was an imbalance. That's why it's called lopsided South China Sea policy. The question right now is this administration swinging in the extreme opposite direction, right? By being too nice to China. That was my concern, right? So I think this is the problem we have. Can we go next? And in fairness to the Duterte administration, particularly Secretary Lorenzana, we're finally upgrading and maintaining our facilities in Pag-asa. So kudos to the Duterte administration for doing that. Now, this is it. What really, really annoys me is this blame game between different Filipino administrations. Us Filipinos fighting among each other habang a foreign power is assaulting our sovereignty. I don't want to quote General Luna. I don't think this is the right place for that. But I know General Luna would have said a lot, right? There's that scene in General Luna, nag-aaway-away sila when Americans betrayed us, right? And bought us from Spain. I think very similar thing is happening. So it frustrates me when this foreign secretary and that foreign secretary and this president, that president play blame game. Now, only an idiot would argue, sorry to friends, that it's the Aquino administration that's the cause for China's reclamation activities and everything they're doing in the South China Sea. If you bother to do a research, you would know that as early as 1980s, the Chinese already had this plan. the island chain strategy. The first island chain covers East China Sea and the South China Sea, and the idea was by the end of this decade, they should have dominated that. So this is a long-running strategy by China, and yes, China is actually copying what the US did when the US tried to dominate the Americas and the Caribbean, and the Romans did the same in the Mediterranean. So no, what China is doing right now is part of a long-running strategy. It is not the fault of the previous administration that's what's happening. All right, please read, including my book, probably. Next. Of course, shameless plug-in. Next. This is the problem we have. I agree that President Duterte's words per se should not be taken literally. But the problem is that in diplomacy is about signaling your interests. And when your words, you don't know if the words are serious or not, you also send mixed signals to different countries. Now, of course, deception, you don't need to read Art of War to know that deception is good for foreign policy. But when it's always confusing, right, whether the president means it literal or not, that's going to create problem for us. And at some point, it's possible that other countries will not take us seriously. So this is what we're facing. President Duterte correctly called for engagement with China. I agree with that. And I blame the Obama administration for not supporting us when we filed the arbitration award. This is what really annoyed me. When in July 12, 2016, the arbitration award came out, what did President Obama do? He sent Susan Rice, his national security advisor, not to Manila but to Beijing. Instead of supporting us in that very crucial period, the United States chose to actually prioritize better relationship with China. Now, I don't have enough time to go to details. The Trump administration is the different ballgame, and we can discuss that later on. But the fact of the matter is that I think President Duterte made the right call to call for de-escalation of tensions. As they called it, soft landing. I agree with that. But the problem is this. 3 years henceforth, what on earth is happening? So President Duterte has been super nice to China. Binigay na ang lahat, at least rhetorically, right? We didn't raise the arbitration award. And by the way, in ASEAN, the chairman can make his own statement unilaterally. We could have made the South China Sea and arbitration issue of the Philippines a central issue in ASEAN when we were the chairman. We didn't do that. And this is what we get from China. Right? Next.
Okay.
I'm done?
Richard.
Okay, just the next slide and I'm done. You can eat from my other time. This one. Next. This is what's happening. The militarization of the West Philippine Sea has actually exacerbated over the past 2 years. So the question right now is, maybe China is a friend of President Duterte, but is China really the friend of the Filipino people? They should show us evidence, not just rhetoric. Thank you very much.
First thing first, calling you out on a statement you made that China is assaulting our sovereignty. No, it's not about sovereignty, it's EEZ. Sass, you have to meet his arguments. Mr. Heydarian, you did not meet Ms. Sassot's arguments because she brought up the issue of relationships based on a historical understanding of two countries. The approach of China in characterizing territory, which includes both terrestrial and marine property, as property. Okay?
So we'll ask
Ms. Sassot?
Heydarian later.
Yeah.
But we'll ask Sass for now to engage Heydarian.
Question that
Questions
question.
also from the audience anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Richard Heydarian. You made my job easy. Okay. First, I would like to address the issue of militarization of the South China Sea. The militarization of the South China Sea didn't happen now. It happened a long time ago. The militarization of South China Sea happened the moment Europeans colonized all of these communities around the South China Sea. The militarization happened then. The militarization happened when the Dutch and the Portuguese fought over the Strait of Malacca. The militarization happened when the British and the French sent their warships there. The militarization happened when Japan occupied one of the features of the South China Sea, and that is Spratlys for its guano. The militarization happened in the South China Sea when the Americans kept on, I would like to emphasize it, kept on until this day, kept on using the South China Sea as its transit points for its warships, oftentimes equipped with nuclear weapons. So blaming only one country for militarization and blaming China for starting the militarization is historically incorrect, right? China is actually responding to the militarization that has been going on in the sea. As I mentioned earlier, this sea before served as a channel for trade. The only thing that these communities were concerned of during those times is battling pirates, right? In Hong Kong, there is a painting out there. I forgot who the artist is because I forgot the name. I cannot pronounce Chinese name. It's in Hong Kong. It was during Ming Dynasty. It was a ship battling a pirate in the South China Sea. It was a how do you call it, Chinese ships during that time. So it was a Chinese ships battling pirates in the South China Sea, right? That was their major concern during that time. It's not about owning the sea and militarizing it. It is facilitating the trade in the South China Sea. The militarization happened when the notion of territory invaded this order, right? The traditional order during that time was an open trade, right? I studied in Leiden University, right? It is where Hugo Grotius studied. Hugo Grotius is like the father of international law. The concept of free seas was attributed to him. And it was wrongly attributed to him because he came up with that concept in order to defend what the Dutch was doing against the Portuguese during that time, right? Hugo Grotius copied the notion of free seas in this order during the time, right? Before these Americans kept on insisting on freedom of navigation. Freedom of navigation was the traditional order in our community. What changed this? What changed this is the meddling of outside powers in this traditional order. And that meddling, especially by the United States, under the guise of freedom of navigation operations, is actually worsening the situation, right? The opposition kept on saying, what about Indonesia? Indonesia keep on blowing up Chinese fishermen vessels, but China is not launching a war against Indonesia? Interesting case, right? Why? Why do you think China is not launching a war against Indonesia? What do you think? No, the thing here is Indonesia is perceived by everyone as acting on its own interest. It is not perceived as a puppet of any superpower. The Philippines is perceived even by Asian countries as a puppet of the United States, right? So when we act, the hawks, right? The hawks in China thinks that we are just being the mouthpiece of the empire, right? It is thinking, the hawks in China are thinking that we are acting in the interest of the United States rather than in our own interest. Because what is our best interest? Our best interest is to have a South China Sea as it was before, marked by open trade relationship. It is not, it is a different kind of relationship than what we have right now, dominated by military interests. It's not just the military interest of China that's dominating the South China, it's also the military interest of the United States. Richard Heydarian mentioned earlier the first and second China Island strategy, but the second China Island strategy has a precedent, and that is the first island chain strategy of the United States. And that first island strategy of the United States, Philippines, our country, is part of the defensive perimeter of the United States. What does it mean? What does it mean? I'm going to use an analogy that's familiar to you. You know Captain America, right? So the first island strategy was crafted during the Cold War. It was mentioned by, i-fact check nyo ako verifies, but I think it was mentioned by Dean Acheson in a speech. And he said that the first island, that they should maintain this defensive perimeter in the Pacific theater, starting from the Aleutian Islands, Taiwan, and of course, going to the Philippines. What does it mean? Because the strategy of the United States is this, to make sure that no war reaches its shore. And how does it do that? It forms these bases that could stop its potential threat to its national security.
Okay.
And the United States and the Philippines is that shield against the United States, right? And as like the shield of Captain America, it is often the target of the threat, right? So this first island strategy, I think, should have been unpacked more by Heydarian. What does it mean to us?
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
my time is
so
up.
We will ask Richard for his side. Also, in relation with what Sass has already said, going back to her original point about we should not focus on owning the seas, but we should focus on how we relate to the seas. So, responsible to the things that Sass just said, but also in relation with her original points.
All right, thank you, Trixie and Sasot, for making this very easy. The first thing is this. I hate this when people say, well, US did that, therefore what China did is not bad anymore. You see, as a child, you're taught that two mistakes don't make it right. For 400 years, we have been at the behest, or at the receiving end, actually, of imperialism of the West. That should not blind us to the imperialism of the East. And you know what? That's the reason why I like Mahathir a lot. And I talked to him last month about him. You know, Mahathir, when he was in Beijing, in front of the Chinese in the Great Hall of People, he said that we have to be worried about new imperialism. You see, a true, strong, independent-minded leader will not say, oh, West, screw you, and then suddenly go all the way for the other side and make beshi with them, right? That is not how you create an independent foreign policy. Neither the East nor the West, only the Republic of the Philippines' interests. That is how you should do independent foreign policy. The second thing, God, I hate this, over and over again. Yes, the Philippine Arbitration Award was not about sovereign claim, title to claim. No question about it. When we would love to take our claims to actually to an international arbitration, but guess what? The Chinese will never agree to that. And the Chinese will never agree to that because they know their claims are complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. Now, this is the problem that we have right now. Actually, Trixie, let me read this for you because you defend the government. I use the term used by the Malacanang itself when the Chinese vessels were spotted around Kota Island. This is what Salvador Panelo, our favorite well-dressed guy, also said that. He said, while we remain friendly with respect to trade relations, we'll always assert our sovereignty when it is being impaired or assaulted. If they continue to be present in our territory, then it is an assault on our sovereignty. If you know the basic thing about UNCLOS, you will know that first of all, Pag-asa is a rock. Therefore, you can make a claim over Pag-asa, right? And we have been occupying Pag-asa for quite a long time, right? Therefore, we have sovereign claims in the West Philippine Sea. And third, my God, try to basically understand it. Sovereign rights and sovereignty, there is a distinction. But they fall on a spectrum of jurisdictional rights. So, hindi porkit sinabi mo na wala kang sovereignty over certain waters, it doesn't mean that you cannot say that country A or B are assaulting on our rights. That is why, for instance, Carpio Morales and Foreign Secretary de Rosario, they filed that ICC case against China because their argument was the Chinese are preventing our fishermen, our own people, from exploiting the resources within our exclusive economic zone per international law. So let's be very clear about that. And this is why I love this long form, because we can really demolish these kinds of nonsensical arguments. I'll keep it there. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Next. Are we done with this issue? Not yet. Not by a long shot. We'll give you a short rebuttal and then did you go first? Did
She
you go
went first. So we can have
you
like
get the last word, Richard.
last
All right, go,
2 or
Sass.
3 minutes. And again, another 2 or 3 minutes for Heydarian.
2 minutes each.
Okay, 2 minutes.
You guys okay? Go, Sass. Richard, you get the last word.
Sass, just moderating it, please particularly respond to Heydarian's point about not looking at the West anymore and just like looking how do we respond to China now.
First of all, it's important to understand why China is behaving this way, right? If you would like to defeat your enemy, you should fully know why your enemy is defeating this way. And the last administration really had a poor understanding of why China was behaving that way because I don't think any one of them speaks Mandarin. Remember, the ambassador that they tried to send to Beijing didn't even know the difference between soft power and hard power. Didn't even understand what diplomacy was. So that was how incompetent the last administration was. And I just like to respond to not blaming the Aquino administration for what's happening right now. During one of the press conference in Malacanang featuring the fishermen at Scarborough Shoal, the fishermen themselves in Scarborough Shoal mentioned this, that between 2000 and 2012, they never experienced the trouble that they experienced in 2012. So I think that speaks volume already, right? Of when all these conflict and trouble that we're experiencing is happening, right? It was a policy fault of the previous administration. Why suddenly the fisherman is having trouble? Why did it happen during Gloria's time? Why did it happen during Aquino's time? I think we should reflect more on that. Second, Heydarian says that because the current administration is using sovereignty in territory, we should use it. I think that's unforgivable. We are academics. We shouldn't just rely on what the government is saying. We know what these terms mean, right? And it is our duty to make sure that they are using the right terms and not confusing our people. I understand that the government is just good. You know, when you work in government, you cannot really deviate radically from what the previous government is doing. So you continue the discourse. So I'm sure that they are doing this because they're also as lost as everyone when it comes to these terms. Because this was never explained to us during that time.
Time's up.
It was times.
Sige, finish your thought.
Yeah.
Finish your
Wrap
last
up.
thought.
Okay, I'm just gonna wrap. Just give me a minute. Okay. To end, I'm an international relations person. My concern is to create an environment, an international environment that is conducive for us to pursue our interests. And our interests cannot be pursued based on our fundamentalist view on things. Why? Because we are not the only one in the world. Our interest is moderated by other interests in international relations. We can only pursue our interest when we reconcile it with the interests of other actors in the international system. And I think that the past administration wasn't good at doing that. And is this administration better? I think it's better in a bit, but I wish it could do more in order to do that. How? It could have strengthened its diplomatic initiatives by deepening the diplomatic relations between the two countries. And that entails informing the public of what is going on. Because right now, the media is dominating the discourse, and I am here trying to warn all of you that we are now entering a very critical phase wherein we are fomenting a very racist discourse that could easily snowball into a country that could commit genocide against another race.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sass.
Richard,
so
you have
much for
3
time.
minutes.
All right, first of all, again, this whole understanding argument, you know, the more I read Mein Kampf of Hitler, the more I understand him and the more I hate that guy.
Closer.
Because understanding should not be a basis for rationalizing the mistakes of other countries, especially if those mistakes, using Malacanang terms, is an assault on our sovereignty. So please, yes, I mean, I've been studying China for heaven's sakes, and let's not do strongman. You know very well, Sass, from my works that I don't cite officials alone, I cite tons of works, right? The other thing we have to keep in mind is this. I actually agree that we're going to get benefits from China. Yes, China is actually going to invest in the Philippines. I like, you know, we'll have more tourists from China and other things. But the thing is this. I mean, I got this news that, well, China right now is our top destination for banana exports. Congratulations. It's great to sell more bananas to China, but we have to make sure that we don't look like a banana republic, because this is the problem we have all around the region. If you look at the Vietnamese, they're standing up to China. If you're looking at Indonesia, they just renamed certain parts that overlaps with the 9-dash line into North Natuna Sea. The Malaysians are also standing up to China. In fact, the Malaysian government just made a statement a few days ago that they will not deal one-on-one with China. They want the ASEAN to stand together when they deal with China. I hope that our government, if they truly want to be an independent in terms of their foreign policy and fight for our rights, learn a bit or two from Mahathir, from Vietnam, from Indonesia and other countries. And by the way, this is not a choice between kowtowing to China and at the same time going to war with China. That's ridiculous. China is the last country that wants to go to war. The moment a war happens here in the South China Sea, that's the perfect excuse for US and other countries to come in. The moment there's a war that China invades in other countries, other smaller Southeast Asian countries are not going to bandwagon with China. They're going to go with US. In fact, Singapore, which is a Chinese majority city-state, has allowed the Americans to have permanent positioning of their naval assets in Changi. Why? Because of China. So if you bother to really research about what's happening on the ground, you'll know that the choices is not between acquiescence and war with China. It's actually, as Buddha said, there's a third way. And the third way is resistance. Not the way that necessarily the previous administration did, but a smarter way. Now, on the Chinese debt trap, I don't agree that there's going to be a Chinese debt trap. Why? Because I don't think the Chinese investment will ever be as large compared to the size of our GDP. And yet, even if Chinese investments are going to be limited, if they're badly negotiated, if as collateral we're going to put our national patrimony assets, that's problematic. And that could have very negative implications for our country. And the militarization issue, this is the last issue I want to address. The United States of America is not the country who's claiming Pag-asa. It's not the country which is claiming Panatag Shoal. Let's be very clear about that. It's China that is claiming the South China Sea. Let's be very clear about that. And as far as militarization is concerned, since 2013, the Chinese have built islands that are incomparable to any of islands in the area. And on their fake islands, they're putting surface-to-air missiles, anti-cruise ballistic missiles, electronic jamming equipment. And what is the purpose? The Chinese said it openly. General Zhang in 2013 said, our strategy is a cabbage strategy. Eventually, they won't even have to have war. All they'll have to do is suffocate our supply lines and force us out of the West Philippine Sea.
Thank you.
So if we really want to be an independent country, let's not make excuses for China. Let's fight for our rights and learn from Malaysia and other countries who are standing their ground. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Done with this topic.
So I think
Just this topic,
before we move on to the next topic, while you're setting up for the next topic, is there a next topic? We have only done China. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
Because we're not experts on those two topics, we'll just keep it compact.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I think some members of the
I
audience
think
might
both parties made very good points. What do you think?
have questions.
What do you think?
How did the audience like the China discussion? Very informative, right? Very informative.
Valid points. Sass raised historical perspective as well as cultural perspectives, both the Philippines and China. Mr. Heydarian raises the more pressing issues of aggression, expansion, etc. Things dealing with the resources, the EEZ. Sass meets them by, again, infusing it with historical perspective. When did the aggression and expansion actually begin? It is our problem right now, but who led to this is another important perspective to the entire issue. What do you guys think? Any other points that we missed?
And the good thing, Attorney Trix, is in the end, there seems to be a point of agreement from what I noticed. No?
Yeah.
But of course, for SAS, the administration right now is doing something satisfactorily, but could do it better. But for Heydarian, that's how I see it. I think this administration has to do more. It's because it's not satisfactory for
Let's just get
for
one
him.
comment from the audience.
Yeah.
Hi. In keeping with our historical perspective, I'd just like to point out that the United States didn't win the World War II on its own. It did so with the help of the Allied powers, which are the countries seated at the UN Security Council right now. So together, they make up the New World Order that secured for us the victory over the Axis powers, namely Germany and Japan and Italy. And related to that, I'd just like to make this additional comment that I don't think it's fair to compare Hitler with China. That's all.
Okay, we have a question over here, Attorney Trixie.
To whom addressed?
Ako po si Paolo Joaquin Garion, and this is to both of you actually. Kasi I know that the South China Sea dispute is a very problematic issue, not just for the Philippines, but also for the surrounding areas in the South China Sea. But the thing is, I want to hear from both of you, what is the best solution that China, Malaysia, Philippines, those claimants of the South China Sea, the best solution that people can get so that this issue can be solved either in the near or far future?
Who wants to go first?
You-
Yeah.
Ano, ano?
What is the best solution for all of the claimants, including China, I think, from your question, Philippines, Malaysia, China, to the dispute?
Well, for me, the best solution to the dispute is to follow the Arctic model, right? The Arctic model, people, the countries around you know the Arctic, right? It's on top of on top. It's in the Arctic Sea, and it's literal countries like Finland, Russia, United States, etc. Right? And right now they are shelving sovereignty claims. Right? They are also fighting over sovereignty about a lot of areas there. But right now they are focusing on making sure that the Arctic Sea's ecology is preserved and maintained, and of course, on cooperation on a lot of issues surrounding the environment, right? And they have instituted a multilateral organization called the Arctic Council. And the Arctic Council, and what's good about that model is that it's not only based on states. Hindi lang mga estado yung pwedeng sumali, pati na rin yung mga communities, mga indigenous communities. So you have states, and then you have observers ng mga indigenous communities that they can suggest things on how to improve the situation, especially the environmental situation. So I think that is the best model right now that we could adopt when it comes to the South China Sea. Kasi for me, as I mentioned earlier, this conflict was actually caused by the idea of territory, right? And sovereign rights, etc. It will not solve the problem. If we keep on pursuing that line, right? We will not have a cooperative relationship because those discourses, those categories encourages division. So we must create a new discourse that encourages cooperation, unity, and a new identity. I wrote this in my column in Manila Times before, that we should develop a new identity based on the sea, right? In our country, our identity is based on the land. Kabayan. Bayan is etymologically means land. So maybe we should develop a kadagat, right? People belonging to the same sea. And all these countries belong to the same sea. And we should keep on emphasizing that. To wrap this, Fallacy is already looking at me, wrap this thing. In the 16th century, there is this king in one of the pre-colonial Indonesian states, King Gowa the 14th. I-fact check no kung tama, but King Gowa something. Sultan Aladdin or something like that. The Dutch would like to monopolize the spice trade. Right? They would like to close the sea. And the king told him that the land you can own. I'm paraphrasing this. But the sea, it's unheard of that you can own it. It is free for all. So maybe Duterte could change his narrative and take China to task. Not just China, but all the claimants to task. Right? Remind them of that very, very telling phrase from that pre-colonial Indonesian state king that in our region, the traditional order is not owning the sea, but about sharing it.
Okay. Heydarian, you also have 4 minutes. So I think it was 4 minutes.
Make sure, Mare liberum, right? We have to keep it as open seas. That's a very important thing. That's a foundation to the whole international order. Once every big country tries to monopolize their neighboring waters just because it's named after them, then we're going to have a big, big problem. Now, the approach forward is very close to the sentiments of my good friend, our ambassador to China, Chito Santa Romana. We have to combine deterrence and engagement. The problem is that the previous administration was so much on confrontation and deterrence, and I feel with this administration sometimes we're too much on the engagement, not much on the deterrence, at least if that's the rhetoric of the president, is taken in consideration. So the way forward is a Goldilocks approach, whereby first of all, we set our red lines. Yung mga meron sa ating exclusive economic zone, it's exclusive, for heaven's sake. You see, Scarborough Shoal is what? Around 100 nautical miles away from our closest waters. It's 800 nautical miles probably away from Hainan, right? And if China is going to claim the entire thing all the way into our waters, this is my problem. The China formula is what is mine, what is yours, we share. That is unacceptable. So we set the boundaries very clear in our exclusive economic zone, per international law, per UNCLOS, that's us. Yung mga areas ng South China Sea whereby we don't have overlapping claims, we can do joint development, joint exploration, and in certain areas which are the high seas, well, you have the International Seabed Authority in charge of that. The law is very clear, and China has actually ratified the UNCLOS. The problem is one country is not following it. Other countries are also doing violations, but you see, China is NBA level, while other ASEAN countries are like at best PBA level. No offense to PBA, right? And there's no comparison. So the Goldilocks approach is this. We engage China to make sure we don't have unnecessary conflict, but at the same time, we deter China by making sure that what is within our exclusive economic zone is ours. We protect that. And this is where the United States is a very important country. The US is not the most reliable ally in the world, no question about it. We were more reliable to the Americans perhaps than they to us, no question about it. I don't disagree with that. But the US is unfortunately our only insurance policy. Absent the United States treaty alliance with the Philippines, and by the way, the Trump administration clarified the MDT will apply in the South China Sea, something none of the other administration did. We have wala tayong laban sa US, ay sa China. Yan ang katotohanan. We kick out the Americans, in 1992. What the hell did we do since 1992? It's only in the past 6-7 years that we're modernizing the AFP. So we need our alliances with US as a leverage against China, as a deterrence against China. But at the same time, we have to make sure that in the process of deterring China, right, we don't also give up our sovereignty or sovereign rights to US, right? So it's a very difficult balancing act. I know President Duterte was just a mayor. Davao is a fantastic place. But I hope Mayor President Duterte will also listen to people who have bothered to understand this issue in a very nuanced way over the past decades and decades. And I think that's the way to move forward. A Goldilocks approach where our red lines are clear, we deter China by using our alliances, but at the same time we also engage China. And guess what? That's exactly what Malaysia, Vietnam, and Indonesia are doing. Why not learn from our neighbors? Maybe we can learn a thing or two from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Sass. A round of applause for the issue on China for both of them. You can actually Google or learn from what they're suggesting. For Sass, you can research about the Arctic model. That's true. And for Heydarian,
by the way, I agree. Like, some sort of resource sharing arrangement is, but in specific areas, we have to be very clear about it.
Yeah. But of course, these are all things that the Duterte administration can hopefully learn from the two of them. Because even though Sass might think we have issues before, that kind of model is a very smart suggestion from her. I'm going to be frank with that. And of course, with Heydarian, that is the current approach of most countries. So that is also something we can research on as Filipinos to try to convince our government, even if it's Duterte or not, whoever the government is, to possibly adopt those sound approaches. So I think, Attorney Trixie, we're moving on with the next portion.
Could you get the next topics?
So we will collapse this next part, and this is the last part. We'll give each one of you 10 minutes to discuss Duterte's approach domestically, because China, the issue in China is more on the external or foreign approach. So on the domestic issues, at least the two issues, please comment about federalism and the war on drugs. I think we can make Richard go first on this topic because Sass went first on the other topic. You have 10 minutes each before you go to respond with each other.
I have a PowerPoint actually. Okay.
Well, They're setting up your PowerPoint. You can probably...
My argument is very simple when it comes to the war on drugs. We're all against crime and drugs for sure, right? No question about it. We need a drug war, but we cannot afford a dumb war. That is the challenge we have today. I agree with President Duterte that there is a drug menace in this country. In fact, in my book, I mentioned that there was a CNN report that in 2015, even the Sinaloa gang from Mexico was actually caught here in the Philippines. You have Chinese triads, you have different kinds of groups and transnational illicit groups and drug trafficking groups all around in the Philippines. So we have to deal with the problem of drugs. No one is saying we should not deal with them unless, of course, you're in the business. The question is, how do we fight it in the best way possible? My argument is that the drug problem is actually a symptom of a more fundamental problem in the Philippines. And that more fundamental problems is actually lack of confidence in our judicial and penal institutions. You see, if your judicial and penal institutions are not working, right, not only drugs, but all sorts of other crimes will proliferate. That is why, if you want to really go to the root of the problem, because President Duterte is just dealing with the symptom of the problem. If you want to go to the root of the problem, you reform your judicial institutions and penal institutions. At ito yung frustration ko dito sa Pilipinas. You know, pagdating sa gobyerno, we expect the government to do everything. At the same time, we don't appreciate the importance of investing in our state capacity and in our bureaucratic capacity. I'll just give you some of these numbers, and that's very close to my heart. Where's my PowerPoint? Can you please go forward, please? Forward. Although I don't know these numbers. Anyways, we had no time to go through that. I did a survey with AFP, senior officials, what's their view on South China Sea, but we don't have time for that. Okay, next. Okay, this is our real law and order problem. First of all, the budget issue. I actually disagree with Chief Justice Sereno. She said, oh, I solved the budget problem. No, the budget of our judiciary is pathetic compared to the challenges that it faces. Just go to the previous slide, please. This is our prison system. And if you go to the next slide, majority of people inside our prison are actually pre-trial detainees. 60%, including a senator of this republic. Maybe they'll add another senator soon, as his term is about to end. We have the second worst rate of pre-trial incarceration in the world. And can you go to the next slide? And we have the most congested prisons on earth. Ang katapat po natin, mga Haiti, El Salvador, Guatemala, Comoros. My God, do you even know where these countries are on the map? Well, I know, but do you get my point? If you go to the previous slide, this is it. How can you have law and order when your institutions are this weak and pathetic, right? A single judge in the Philippines has to deal with 600 cases every year. There are only a few thousand courts for 100 million Filipinos. This is unacceptable. You see, you have an overcapacity average of 380% in some of the prisons, and it goes close to 2,000% in some of the other prisons. So when President Duterte comes out and says, let's go for a vigilante approach, let's go for extrajudicial approach probably, I understand why Filipino people will accept that kind of argument. You see, the technical term for that is penal populism, right? This idea that, forget about human rights and democracy and all, meron tayong krimen, we have to deal with it, even if that means circumventing existing constitutional processes. Ang taong bayan po ay nawawala ng tiwala sa concept of human rights and civil liberties and justice because our institutions are not capacitated enough to deal with this issue, right? Now, I disagree with the President Duterte. If the implication of what he's saying or the interpretation of what he's saying is that, well, ang problema po dito ay human rights and democracy, I completely disagree with that. Our problem is that we don't have institutions that can actually protect our human rights. We don't have judicial and penal institutions that actually can make sure that an ordinary Filipino will be protected from crime, and if a crime takes place, there is a deterrence. And mahalaga to, which is next level of my argument. You will be completely out of this world if your argument is we can trust our police to conduct the drug war in the best way possible. Anyone with the basic familiarity, I have 5 minutes, basic familiarity of the Philippine police, I'm sure Sassot will agree with me, anyone will agree with, knows that we have a lot of problematic people in the Philippine National Police. The problem with President Duterte's approach is, in Davao, he knew all the police. So he can make sure that this police You see, this is the problem. That's why in college, you don't teach macro and macro together. Because what applies on the micro level will not necessarily apply on macro level. You don't need to read John Maynard Keynes to know that, for heaven's sakes, in economics. So President Duterte could control and make sure that the police in Davao were efficient enough to conduct certain operations in the best way possible. Probably even know the mistresses of some of these policemen. Once he became the President of the Republic of the Philippines, he probably didn't know more than 90% of the members of the Philippine National Police. So when you launch a drug war and say, there will be blood, and you did not reform your police institutions, you're giving a carte blanche to possibly the worst kinds of people in the law enforcement agencies to conduct all sorts of worst, terrible things. In fact, President Duterte twice suspended the drug war because the Philippine National Police was not doing its job. What's the problem here? Before you unleash the beast, make sure the beast is actually prepared to do the job in the best way possible. He unleashed the beast without making sure our policemen were not corrupt and did their job properly. Right? They were not. This is the problem. It could be even a sequential problem, right? The second thing is that you're questioning whether, human rights and democracy is right for us. And, sometimes the implication of President Duterte is that the problema kasi dito due process, we just have to shortcut it. Well, and this is where the argument on death penalty comes in the picture, right? You see, the problem with death penalty is this. If this is the kind of judicial institutions you have, most likely a lot of innocent people are going to end up on death row. Because this is not the kind of institutions that can properly handle the questions of justice. So again, before talking about death row, make sure that the innocent don't end up there. So this is a problem. It's a question of sequencing. So I'm not against drug war. I'm not against, I am against death penalty, by the way, because this is a question of fate. But my personal belief is different from public policy question. So this is my suggestion to President Duterte. First of all, clean up the police forces before unleashing the beast. More importantly, focus on PDEA, because it's PDEA's job to deal with this problem. This is a drug problem. But most important of all, deal with the root cause of the problem of law and order in this country, and that is not drugs. Drugs is just a symptom. Focus and strengthen the institution of the state. This is what I believe in, and I believe this is the way forward. And I'm very sad na hindi natin pinag-usapan yan. The problem is that the moment I talk about drug war and criticize it, automatically I'm supposed to be pro-drugs, which is completely ridiculous. That's why I love this long-form discussion, because pwede kami mag-uusap ukol sa mga isyong yan. And this is the other thing. Sa mga liberal na criticize ng administration, saying Duterte is a dictator, the drug war is horrible, and by the way, thousands of people have died. Whether it's the PNP numbers. In fact, PNP in March last year said that there are 23,000 unexplained deaths. So what's the point of saying, kumonti po yung snatchers, pero umakyat po yung numbers ng murders? How can you say your country is safer if there are more murders? Okay, it's great that you have less snatching, but murder is a crime. And PNP itself admits that 23,000 unexplained deaths. That does not reflect well on this country's even attractability to investors. If you do not believe me, read the statements of the head of the Korean-Philippine Chamber of Commerce the other year, because one of the Korean businessmen was, by the way, we know what happened, right? We don't go to, so this is also not good for our business. If President Duterte believes in strong economics, he has to deal with law and order issues. So I am for drug war, but not a dumb war, right? And as things stand, I don't think the institutions were prepared to handle it in the best way. But by the way, going back, I'm going to be done with this. It's not enough for liberals to just criticize President Duterte's human rights. They have to help out ordinary Filipinos to appreciate what is human rights and what's democracy. And they have to help out, by the way, including European Union and US, all these countries who are criticizing us, maybe instead of just criticizing us, help us to damn solve this kind of problem. Incapacitate our institutions, right? So I think it's also not correct to just criticize President Duterte and just saying, let's just go to status quo ante, because the previous administration oversaw a huge increase in terms of crimes. That is why a lot of people were feeling unsafe. And by the way, no offense to my colleagues in the mainstream media, I think the mainstream media also contributed to this kind of penal populism by having extremely sensationalist news cycles every single day. In fact, one of the first, I'm from Baguio, so we speak Ilocano, but one of the first Tagalog words I learned was like patay, 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 because it's like TV patay. Okay, it's the other channel, but it's always those words, right? And in fact, if you look at the crime rates, they actually decreased over the past 3 decades, but there was a spike. But this is my point. The mainstream media and the liberals should not just criticize, they should provide a concrete alternative. And a concrete alternative will not just criticize the response to the symptoms, but provide concrete institutionalized solutions to the root cause of the problem. And I think this is the real debate that we should have, not just talk about human rights, but how should human rights be relevant to ordinary Filipinos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. 10 minutes for Sass, and if she has a presentation as well.
I'm the presentation. Charot. Timer starts now. Char. Okay, I think I have to make my position clear on drugs in general. Shabu must be totally eliminated from Philippine society. As in 100% eliminated. There are only 2 countries in the world where Shabu was fully legal. Well, crystal meth. Japan and Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany, but they used the drugs to drug their soldiers, right? The Japanese used it to drug their soldiers as well as Nazi Germany. And then because it was freely available, they saw immediately the bad consequences of crystal meth. There were rising crimes of rape, etc. So they proceeded from legalization to criminalization. So the talk of crystal meth, or legalizing crystal meth, or even the softer decriminalizing crystal meth, it's kind of unheard of because we are the only country, we are one of the top crystal meth users countries in the world. The examples in Europe, Portugal, Netherlands, etc., crystal meth is not the number 1 narcotics in their country. It's cannabis. When you smoke marijuana, you're happy. You don't go out and kill people. You don't go out and rape people. And I know it because I live in the Netherlands wherein you can freely smoke cannabis. And truth be told, you will never see anyone fighting inside a cafe wherein they smoke marijuana. You would see people fighting in football stadiums during a football fight or in a club wherein they drink alcohol. And that brings me to my second point about drugs. For me, I agree with reforming this judiciary, etc. I think we all agree with it. But another important thing that we should note is that we should recalibrate and relax our drug law, right? We should be really strict on shabu, no doubt about it. But with other drugs, we should reclassify them. We should be more understanding of the specific effect of different narcotics, right? Alcohol is a narcotic. You can drink, everyone can drink it, I'm sure. Even your 15 or 14-year-old kids or 16-year-old kids drink it. And alcohol, oh my God, it messes up with your brain. It messes up with your brain more than, like, for example, marijuana does. And it's scientifically proven fact, right? It messes up with your brain compared to other narcotics that are considered illegal in a lot of countries. So I believe that we should try to revisit our drug laws, right? And that will also help us fight this drug war better, right? Instead of stretching our resources, fighting every kind of drug, we focus on the most harmful, most disruptive drug there is in our society, and that is shabu, right? That's why I don't really, you wouldn't see in my page celebrating anyone being caught with marijuana. Because I know the effect of marijuana. I live in a country where you can freely smoke marijuana. I don't do that. In fact, I actually support the legalization of cannabis. And I don't know the position of Richard here. I think we spoke about this, and he said that he support medical cannabis. Me, I support medical and recreational because the only difference between the two is that the other one would be penalized because they abuse the the prescription for medical cannabis, right? And then you open up another opportunity for corruption. So you just legalize it and then regulate the use of cannabis. Regulate it, just like what the Dutch do. You can only smoke it at a specific area. If you bring it outside, it will be confiscated. So instead of just, focusing on these softer substances, let's focus on the real thing. Shabu is the real scourge in our society. And in fact, it's the most abused narcotics in our country, right? So let's focus on it. Fourth, I agree with Heydarian about the status of the police force. And I think Duterte mentioned this several times. He realized that 40% of our police force is involved in the illegal activity, right? And he acknowledges this. The thing is, he inherited this system. He didn't create this system. And some people in the opposition try to paint that he created the system by, having this harsh stance against drugs. But the system that system already existed before he came. I agree that he should focus more. A lot of attention should be focused more in reforming the police force, and I hope that President Duterte would do this in the last 3 years of his life. Of his life as president, because after that, he would just be a doting grandfather, right? I'm so sorry po. Huwag niyo po akong batuhin. I believe that President Duterte should focus more on reforming the police force. Because after him, I don't know anyone else who could reform the police force. Right? Because he's a very disciplinarian. He speaks with such authority, and he gets things done. So if he cannot do this in his term, what's going to happen to our country with 40% of your police force involved in illegal activity? Right? I think there should be more prosecution, more news about police involved in crimes, being held accountable, because that would restore our faith in the police force, right? Because if the President Duterte doesn't have faith in it, right? He speaks with such despair, right? That, he even says that his drug war is kind of a failure, right? Because the influx of shabu kept on intensifying, etc. And I believe it's because of the fact that a lot of people in the police force are involved in it. I remember during the first few weeks of his presidency that he announces this list of police officers involved in drugs, right? He began it with the 5 generals, narco generals. I really wonder where they are now. Right? Where are they now? I think we should ask that. Instead of just asking, why is Peter Lim still alive, or why is he still out there? At least there is a case filed against Peter Lim. But these 5 generals, where are they? Nandito ba sila? Char. Where are they? And I think we owe this not just to the future generation, but to those people who have been collateral damage to this drug war, that we make sure that our police force, after Duterte, would become much better than when he first arrived at office. And the opposition, I think, has the job to help Duterte in cleaning the police force. Right? Instead of just focusing their attention in creating this stupid Bikoy video implicating a 14-year-old kid as a recipient of drug war, why don't you start exposing the police officers who are involved in the illegal drug activities, right? So that even when you become in power, you will have an easier time solving the shoe problem of this society. So it helped Duterte instead to clean the police force, expose them. Yung gumawa ng Bikoy video, yung mga pulis na tiwali na lang yung tirahin ninyo. Di ba? Pagubarin nyo rin. Di ba? Baka may mga tattoo rin yan. Di ba? So I think focus in it. Last thing about the drug war, I think Duterte has been unfairly criticized about this one. I agree that there are times that he might be a little harsh, right? Especially when employs psych war against the criminals, right? He's saying, papatayin ko kayo, etc. This is part of psych war tactics, right? Because these criminals do not recognize soft words. If you just say Heydarian to them that you're gonna be prosecuted, and then they carry guns, what's the match of your prosecution with their guns, right? So I think we should also credit him. Although that I would agree with Duterte with his evaluation of his work. He just said that he think that he did okay. Pasang-awa. I agree with him, right? We notice a million people surrendering, volunteering themselves. Some of those were forced, of course. We saw that there have been around, according to the latest figures of PNP, what's it called? What was it called? The real numbers details. Ano na lang to, 30 seconds. Real numbers details, they have been around
Hashtag real numbers.
hashtag real numbers, around 180,000 drug operations since 2016. And out of 180,000, around 174, 75, 76,000 were arrested. They were all alive, right? Around 6,000, give and take, were dead. So given my not so competent math skills, we could say that 2 to 3% died in drug operations, while 98%, 97 to 98% were actually alive. So this is actually, given that figure, this drug war actually is not a really inhumane drug war. Although I would recognize that there are people that should be prosecuted for the wrongful arrests that they have committed and the deaths that they have caused, right? Because of mistaken identity, etc. But that doesn't define the drug war of Duterte. What defined the drug war of Duterte is that a lot of people were arrested. A lot of people surrendered. Suddenly, we have more rehabilitation centers, right? Last year, was it Bahay Silangan, Bahay Silay was instituted by the Duterte administration. And I think those
Thank you,
things should be
Sass.
highlighted at the same time as pursuing justice for those who are wrongly accused and those who experience injustice from the hands of our
Thank you.
police force. Thank you.
Thank you, Sass.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Attorney Trixie and I, we noticed that both of them have more in agreement than disagreement.
There's way too much love here, guys.
Yes. So, before we wrap up this issue of the war on drugs, the question we will ask to both and have Richard go first is whether or not on the number of deaths, because it seems that there's that point of disagreement. With Richard, we would hear around 20,000 or more. Where does he get that? With Sass, she already mentioned about hashtag real numbers. But then, where is that also source? Why do they believe that? And in furtherance of that, because mostly you agree, and this is an agreement between me and Attorney Trixie, a question we would ask for both of you. Can you answer and tell our viewers and our live audience, do you believe that extrajudicial killings exist right now under the administration? And are they connected, or can they be connected with the administration or not? So on the numbers and on EJKs specifically. Richard will go first again.
For me, one EJK, one innocent life lost, is too many. I mean, whether it's 1,000, 6,000, 23,000, of course, the more it's worse. But the fact of the matter is that we should not have anything such as EJK in a country like ours.
Okay, wait. Define EJK.
Extrajudicial killings, right? So, meaning
Elements.
violation of the normal due process, right? That someone has been killed without being proven guilty. In fact, by the way, we don't even have death penalty right now, so you should not supposed to kill other people.
Wouldn't
My point
EJKs
is
be
there has to be
state-sponsored killings?
proper investigation. There has to be proper investigations of what on earth is happening. Because if someone is dead and all the police has to say, well, nanlaban, but we didn't really have evidence to show that nanlaban siya, then there's a high probability that person was not killed for the right reason. In fact, even if you were a drug peddler, does that necessarily make you a justified, victim of extrajudicial killing? Not necessarily. That's why we have due process and we have to deal with it necessarily. Now, on the question of President Duterte, yes, we can blame the police, but you are called the commander-in-chief for a reason. command responsibility. You see, this is the ironic thing. President Duterte is supposed to be a strong man. He's supposed to be a leader who can solve all our problems. And yet when something goes wrong, oh, it's not his fault. It's someone else's fault. If you're really a good leader, you make sure that people below you will not abuse power and they'll follow your instruction. So it puts into question the competency of the president if people below are not following his instructions properly, assuming the president himself is not directly involved in these kinds of illegal activities. So I'll give benefit of the doubt that President Duterte is not giving the direct command for EJK or violation of due process, although his rhetoric could be problematic and there's a potential ICC investigations going into that. Now the other thing, the last thing I want to emphasize here is this. You know, Prime Minister Matthew told me the other month very clearly, when it comes to problem of shabu, I completely agree with you, Sass, that shabu is really is going to mess up your brain, right? So we have to have also a very nuanced debate. Sometimes even the word classification of drugs should be used properly, right? Correct. I mean, I agree that, you know, medical marijuana compared to alcohol, you know, which is going to have a worse effect on you. You can actually kill yourself by over drinking overnight, you know, to sachet. No, the problem I have here is this, and this is what Prime Minister Mahathir was saying. You have to deal with the external source of the drugs. And we know where shabu comes from. If you look at the United Nations, it comes from where? Beshi, right? So if President Duterte is really a good friend of China and China is a good friend of ours, the mighty China should better check its borders. Otherwise, as some people would say, maybe we're facing our own opium war. You see, this is what happened to China in the past. The West flooded China with opium war and weakened China until the empire fell apart. I hope that it's not the same policy towards the Philippines. And President Xi Jinping and President Duterte just signed an agreement on counter-narcotics cooperation. I love the Chinese building rehabilitation center here, assuming they really work, right, which is a big question. But I hope China, first of all, makes sure that all these drugs are not flooded on the Philippines.
Thank you,
that's
Richard.
What we have to deal with the problem.
Can we ask for clarification, Mr. Heydarian? According to you, the drugs come from China and they're not regulating it
Not
enough?
all drugs.
Well,
I'm talking about shabu
agreed.
in particular in United
Shabu
Nations.
in particular, and that it's an issue because of our relations with China, and that we should demand that the Chinese be more responsible towards the
We cooperate. Yeah.
Right.
Border
However,
protection. Yeah.
perspective, in the most of the sensational cases, the billions of pesos of imported drugs caught in customs, all the information came from China customs. So
they
as
know.
a matter of fact, they have
So they
been
know.
policing it.
So this has been going on for a long time. So if China knows, why in the past a lot of drugs came in? So that's my
Good
point.
intelligence from China, bad customs.
So, oh, by the way, I don't think it's fair to also blame China for all our faults. We also have bad officials that we have to blame, right? So, as I said, we have to cooperate with China, and I'm glad that President Xi Jinping and President Duterte focus on the issue of anti-corruption and counter-narcotics. And ironically, it's the DEA of US that is helping us a lot with dealing with these transnational crime issues. Let's not forget that also.
Okay. Sass, the question again on the numbers, and do EJKs exist? Can they be connected with the administration?
Okay. Well, as I mentioned earlier, you know, Duterte mentioned that 40% of the police force are involved in illegal activities, right? Definition of EJK includes that the killing is not is a state policy, and that the killing was done outside the outside due process, and due process includes you protecting yourself against a threat. So if a police officer killed someone because that person or group of person threatened his or his life, that's not EJK. Okay. Is there a state policy of EJK? I don't think that there is a state policy of EJK, but I do believe that there are police officers involved in the shabu trade trying to clean their ranks. And we know this during the hearing that was actually instituted by Laila de Lima. Remember that time wherein there was this family, there were these children whose parents were killed, right? They live in Antipolo. Yung mga magulang nila pinatay sa Antipolo kasi yung mga magulang nila ang tulak ng shabu. And the kids say that the shabu came from the police. Right? So we all know that the police killed their parents because the circumstantial evidence is just um, too damning, right? So that's why I have to go back to my original position. The police force should be reformed. The opposition, tigil niyo muna yung pambababoy kay Duterte. Di ba? Babuyin niyo muna yung mga baboy talaga sa pulisya kasi Duterte will be out of power 3 years, right? You will have another chance to govern. But how can you govern with a 40% of police for involved in illegal activities? Right? You cannot govern properly. Babaliktad lang yung situation. Di ba? Ngayon, ginagawa niyo to kay Duterte and your police force is doing all these nasty things. Pag kayo na yung nandiyan nakaupo, what Duterte is experiencing right now would also be done to you by your opposition during that time. Ibabato sa inyo yung sise to whatever that these corrupt police officers are doing. Okay. Now, I just like to respond to the China-Philippine cooperation. There is actually a good model for that. In Czech Republic, ang mga number 1 na tula pushers ng crystal meth were actually Vietnamese. Right? So the Vietnamese were being blamed for that. So what the Czech Republic and Vietnam did, they actually did partnership in order to make sure that the shabu, the crystal meth problem in Czech Republic is solved. So there is actually a good model for cooperation for that, and that's why it's very important that we do not demonize China all the time. If you would like to cooperate with someone, you approach them as a friend. It is better to fight with your friend than your enemy because when friends fight, they seek an amicable solution. When enemies fight, they have to kill each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Sass. Thank you, Richard, for a wonderful debate. I can't believe how awake the audience is, and I think a lot of online viewers are for the whole thing, no? Of course, we've been going for a long time already, and it's amazing that you are able to sustain the attention of our audience. Again, another round of applause for Richard and Sass. And to democracy.
Teka, wrap up mo lang
Thank
yung
you,
point.
Trixie, and thank you also, Jesus.
Good job,
Let's
guys.
just wrap up the points of this
Yeah.
particular debate. I think there was no argument on... Actually, there was no argument, guys. Disappointed in you. No, I'm kidding. So, yeah, there was no point of debate. Just 2 different approaches. Mr. Heydarian correctly pointed out the failures or the weaknesses of the judicial and legal system, including both in law enforcement and in the judiciary. Basically, it comes down to this. There's way too many cases for too little facilities and too few people handling them. Sass and Richard both agreed the police force, the primary enforcer of the war on drugs, has major weaknesses. Sass correctly pointed out 40% that the president has to deal with who are not exactly cooperative with the war on drugs. The only points of disagreement, do EJKs exist and how much responsibility does the president have to bear? That was the actual point of the controversy.
You're smart.
I know.
All right. Jesus, thank you for moderating. Trixie, thank you for moderating. Round of applause. I know there was so much anxiety, nervousness, all that stuff. There you go. That's what this is about. Right? Right? All right. Now down to our main event. Are you guys still okay? A little louder. You guys still okay? Fantastic. All right. For the first time ever, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a super panel of social media luminaries. You know, I really wish Thinking Pinoy could make it today. What's he doing? No, we're not. We can do it in the panel here. Yeah, okay. Yes, okay, so we're going to have a very unique setup for this 8, okay? I'm going to introduce everybody one by one. What we're going to do first is we're going to play clips from some of the most powerful and influential politicians in the country. Short clips. And then the 4 from the pro-Duterte side and the 4 from the anti-Duterte side are going to either criticize or support whatever comes on board. We'll have clips from everybody, from Lenny, Bongbong, Duterte, Mar, et cetera, so it should be quite fun. Every panelist has 3 minutes to criticize or to support, okay? Now, every candidate, can the candidates come here so we can get the rules? Hoy, Francis. All right. Every candidate has 3 minutes to either criticize or support the statement of the politician on the screen. Each candidate will be given 4, is it white cards or red cards? Well, sorry, we're given 3 white cards. The 3 white cards, you can use a card if you super want to rebut a statement.
One of the panelists.
One of the panelists, exactly. So we'll have like six videos. If you think one of the panelists is crazy wrong, then you can use your white card and then you can rebut. Fair?
Yeah.
Yes, fair. Okay. So
it's limited.
Yes, so it's limited. And then afterwards, no holds barred. We'll talk about anything we want, and I think that should be super fun. By the way, our engagement on Facebook is bananas right now. I know. I think it's like more than that now. Anyway, yeah, so thank you so much to everybody home for watching. We're going to boost this like crazy. Hopefully it goes crazy viral. Once again, hashtag is PoliticonPH 2019. All right, we're going to start in 3 minutes. We're just going to set everything up. Please stay tuned. Thanks, guys.
Who came here, no? First, of course, this is a very difficult event to host. All of the bloggers who are here were contacted on a short notice. Of course, around 3 weeks or so, we had to schedule our lives. The 2 main the event bloggers, also had to schedule their lives. Sass had to fly from Netherlands. Richard is so busy with so many media interviews, so he had to cancel some of them. He had to, this is supposed to be his rest day. Saturday is a rest day for Richard. So, but of course, the biggest sacrifice here, I think, and the biggest achievement is most of our audience being very much awake and alive. So, a round of applause to yourselves, di ba? Aside from our online audience, akala nyo kayo lang yung talagang listening and attentive. Madaming nagko-comment online. I think we're at 16,000 concurrent viewers at the same time. So maybe later, I think aabot to ng 500,000 views, if not more, pag nag-replay pa. We reached a peak of 20,000, I think, when I was monitoring it. So sa mga online viewers natin, thank you po for supporting both Richard and Sass. Madami ding dilawan online. Akala nyo DDS lang. Madami ding mga nagko-comment for Richard. Of course, mas vociferous, no? Mas virulent yung mga defenses for Sass and attacks against Richard. Yun lang naman yung napansin ko, di ba? Keep it honest. Hashtag honesty. That's how fun social media is. And again, before we start the next segment, no, I also want to say a small thought piece that this exemplifies the democracy I want to live in. And I think everyone here is interested to belong. Because for the last 3 years, Sass said Duterte made politics, good or bad, more interesting, more involved. No? But I also think, good or bad, it has made it more politicized. Politicized, either divided or more engaged. But this event shows to me the best of both worlds. It's politicized. Is it bad for issues to be politicized? No, everything is political. We have to be aware, we have to be informed, we have to be engaged. But what's bad is to be divided. Because there's no such thing as DDS or Dilawan anyway. We're all Filipinos experiencing traffic, experiencing potholes na laging ginagawa yung daan, sabi nung candidates kanina, kahit hindi naman sira, inaayos. Yung sira, hindi inaayos. So, we all want a good life for ourselves.
Falsis, you're
our
getting a lot
family.
of hate. Hashtag honesty. I think you have to wrap it up.
Hashtag honesty. Kanina love nyo ako online. Aminin nyo. Di ba? Sabi nyo online.
Yeah, tara, let's do this. All right, okay.
I'm just stalling. Online stall.
All right, let's do this. Okay, I'm going to introduce our super panel. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for these 8 brave souls. All right, first of all, she graduated UP Diliman, AB Linguistics and Law, MA candidate in archaeology, trained in the United Nations Institute for Training and Research on Laws and Advocacy of Conservation, minor international. The guy handling the Lila de Lima case. Ladies and gentlemen, Darwin Cañete. Dosta Vista in the Philippines, Internet Logistics Company. Please welcome Jason Gaguan. And me. All right, so, yeah, nah, I'm not going to introduce myself. All right, we're going to do, once again, these are the rules. We're going to start first with clips from 6 of the most influential and, I guess, powerful politicians.
Controversial.
Some of them, actually all of them. Yeah. No, not Sunny Angara is not controversial. The 5 out of 6 are, yeah. And we are going to react. Everybody gets 3 minutes each, whether you want to support the statement or criticize it. After 3 minutes are done, if any of you hate what the other panelist says, you have 3 white cards. You get to use 1 white card, and you get to rebut. Fair? You can use a white card again after a rebuttal again. Okay? And then after we do the 6 videos, we go all out. We talk about everything. I have a couple of topics in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? All right, let's get the show on the road. Good luck, everybody. Let's start.
Sabi ni Sass, press play. So I think that
Open
was,
to interpretation what the portrait was all about.
it's a postmodern discussion.
Hey, the new guys, do you guys know Jim Paredes? You do? Okay, because what's the name? The Danny Javier, is that the legend? Yeah, so he was here a while ago, and he had to leave, so he left some money for the Marawi soldiers. Can you give it to Jim na lang? Oh, okay, go. I was just trying to, like, it's hard to stretch as a host.
You're a horrible host, man.
Are we ready?
I think Jim Paredes will make a donation matching the donation of Danny Javier.
Puede.
If he's watching.
Yes. I don't want to go too hard on him. I mean, like, you know, he's
I
had
heard
hard
this in
enough.
France.
What's that?
I heard this abroad.
In Paris. All right, let's do this. Volume, please.
Attorney Estelito Mendoza, na sinabi niya, nung pumunta ang father ko pumunta sa China para pirmahan yung diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China in 1975. Pagkatapos daw nung pirmahan, meron nag-uusap-usap sila, di tapos na nasa isa lang holding room. Deng Xiaoping siya at saka isang deputy yung interpreter ni Deng Xiaoping. Sinabi raw ng aking ama, sinabi, anong gagawin? What do we do about these islands that we are contesting? Paano yan? I guess we will just bring it to the UN. Ang sabi daw ni Deng Xiaoping sa kanya, wag mong gagawin yun. Because pag pinadala mo sa UN yan, walang mangyayari dyan.
Tama.
Tayo na lang dalawang mag-usap.
Ayun.
You tell us what you want, we tell you what you want, and we will